Welcome to This Explainer. For pretty much the entire history of the internet, the word digital has essentially been a synonym for infinite. Think about it for a second. If you have an MP3, a digital photograph, or a text file, you can copy and paste it a million times at literally zero cost, right? The digital world is basically built to be this engine of endless abundance. But today, we're exploring a concept that fundamentally breaks that rule. We're introducing a profound paradox, a digital asset that absolutely cannot be copied, duplicated, or inflated. We're unpacking the real mechanics behind Bitcoin's underlying value, specifically its fixed supply. How on earth can a piece of code enforce a strict physical feeling limit in a digital universe? And what does that actually mean for the future of global value? Okay, let's dive into this. 21 million. Now, in the grand scheme of global finance, this is a remarkably small number, but it's also the most unyielding number in modern economics. Did you know Bitcoin can never exceed a maximum supply of 21 million coins? When we talk about this limit, we aren't talking about some temporary policy set by a board of directors or a guideline that might just get adjusted if the market experiences a downturn. No, this is a hard-coded, cryptographic absolute. In traditional software, changing a limit is as easy as altering a line of code and pushing an update to a server. But because this system operates on decentralized consensus, changing this maximum ceiling would literally require convincing millions of independent users and network operators all over the globe to collectively agree to devalue their own holdings. Because of that economic game theory, 21 million isn't just a rule. It's a permanent mathematical reality that serves as the absolute ceiling of existence. Now, what's really fascinating about this comparison is the fundamentally different philosophies that drive these two systems. On one side, you have traditional fiat money, which is fundamentally built on elasticity. Central banks operate with the specific capability to expand the money supply essentially on demand. The rationale here is to stimulate economies, provide liquidity during crises, and manage national debt. However, the inherent trade-off of that constant expansion is the dilution of purchasing power over time. Basically, the more units that exist, the less each individual unit is theoretically worth. Bitcoin presents a diametrically opposed model. Its supply issuance is strictly governed by an immutable algorithm, completely isolated from human intervention, political pressure, or economic cycles. There's no central authority that can decide to just print more because it might be convenient in the short term. It's a system built entirely on predictable, absolute math, standing in stark contrast to systems where supply is elastic. So the crucial point is grasping the true weight of digital scarcity. For centuries, human beings have intuitively understood physical scarcity. We know why gold is valuable. You have to expend massive energy to physically dig it out of the earth, and there's a finite amount of it on the planet. We know why prime real estate holds immense value. They simply aren't making any more land. But digital scarcity is an entirely novel concept in human history. What happens when you combine the borderless, instant transferability of the internet with the absolute finite scarcity of a physical commodity? You create a powerful economic pressure cooker. If global demand for this network grows, whether people are using it as a store of value or a borderless settlement layer, while the supply remains rigidly capped, that resulting scarcity effect becomes the defining characteristic of its value. It's the ultimate, unfiltered expression of supply and demand playing out right in front of us on a global scale. Let's move to how this builds, because right now you might be identifying a massive, glaring paradox. If the scarcity is so absolute, and there will only ever be 21 million of these units in existence, how could this possibly function as a usable global system? We have a global population approaching 8 billion people. If you divide 21 million by 8 billion, the math seemingly falls apart. The units are just far too scarce for everyone to even own a meaningful fraction, let alone use them for global commerce. A financial system simply cannot function if the asset is so rare that it seizes up and can't circulate. This is a natural, totally logical objection to a hard cap supply, and understanding how the system survives it requires shifting our perspective from a macro-scale absolute limit down to a microscopic reality. And this brilliantly illustrates what we can call the Satoshi solution. See, one single Bitcoin is not an indivisible, solid object like a physical coin. It is highly divisible code. A single unit can actually be broken down into 100 million smaller fractional pieces, known as Satoshis. When you multiply the hard cap of 21 million by 100 million, you realize the network actually contains 2.1 quadrillion base units. This completely flips the paradigm. It means the system is incredibly granular, allowing people to transact in exceptionally precise, microscopic fractions of value. This elegant design perfectly balances the absolute, unbreakable macro scarcity required to maintain its economic gravity with the expansive micro utility needed for everyday functional use. It basically ensures that no matter how scarce the top level asset becomes, there is deep mathematical liquidity underneath. Which brings us to a compelling final thought. You and I are currently witnessing an unprecedented economic experiment in real time. We have a highly divisible, digitally native asset governed by an unyielding macro cap, interacting with an ever-expanding global economy that is traditionally reliant on infinite credit and money creation. As these two paradigms continue to interact, we are left to observe how this profound scarcity effect will ultimately reshape our understanding of value over the coming decades. When a boundless, digitally connected world relies on an absolutely finite resource, will 21 million ever be enough?